Welcome, GBA fans, to Week 5 of the GBA. This is our weekly preview video. I'm here with none other than Monatui.
Hi everyone, my name is Monatui.
And this week we've got a great array of matchups for you, so let's just hop right into it. Starting our week off, we'll be looking at the Edmonton Coilers taking on the Red Hot Bullet Punch Club. Looking at this matchup, I'm immediately going to give the edge to Dell here this week. That Clodsire is going to have to stay in for about half the game. Looking at Dell's team, we've got the Tyranitar, the Iron Valiant, the Galarian Slowking, even Alomomola is a threat in this game, and Tauros can come, the Thundurus can come, pretty much all things that the Clodsire is going to want to handle. Now, one thing that Dell is going to have to be careful with here is to not bring Intimidate on the Tauros, because it's going to have to switch in quite often, and the Galarian Zapdos can actually take advantage of Intimidate with Defiant this week, so that's something that Dell is going to have to be very careful about. Of course, the Alomomola actually looks like it does a lot of work here. There's a plethora of sets that Dell can utilize to really shut down Uzi's offensive options, and I think that Uzi's actually going to have a very hard time breaking through the Aloe this week, so I am going to give the edge to Dell here, but of course I'm a little bit biased, as you guys already know.
Yeah, we'll see. Maybe this will be the week that the Bullet Punch Club takes its first loss. But alright, kicking off our second matchup of the week, we have the New York Empoleon going up against the Wolverhampton Weavile. On the New York Empoleon side, the away team, we're starting with the away team first, why not? We have Greninja, Garchomp, Mew, Zapdos, Ceruledge, Fortress, Hisuian, Decidueye, Lilligant, Florges, Overquill, and Zangoose. I had to look up the name of that thing. Then we have on the Wolverhampton Weavile side, Great Tusk, Walking Wake, Screamtail, Gengar, Iron Leaves, Rotom Heat, Bisharp, Frostlass, Galarian Moltres, Braviary, and Samurott. So
we're just calling it Frostlass now, yeah?
That's not a,
it's Frostmoth.
That's not a Frost. It's Frostmoth, whatever. They're both ice and cold and floating in the air,
yeah,
whatever.
Close enough. Yeah, sure. Go for it.
Alright. So, right off the bat, big fan of what Greninja can do to this team. The Weaviles do have some checks to it, but Greninja is very important for being able to deal with that Great Tusk. Can also obviously knock out the Rotom if it's not Scarfed. They don't really have anything along the lines of Mach Punch. A lot of their priority are things like potentially like an Aqua Jet or a Sucker Punch, both of which, Greninja resists, so it's not going to be the easiest thing to revenge kill, which is very nice. The Great Tusk is not going to be as effective this game as it can be in other matchups. A lot of the threats on the Empoleon's team are special and can hit it for super effective damage on the special side. Like I mentioned, the Greninja, things like the Mew, the Florges, even things like the Lilligant, they're going to be able to potentially outspeed the Great Tusk and deal a lot of damage to it, while it may not be able to deal a ton of damage in return. With that in mind, I think I'm going to give the edge this week to the New York Empoleon. The combination of Greninja and the rest of his special attackers, I think, are going to prove to be a little too difficult for the Weavile.
Yeah, I agree. Greninja definitely looks good here with its dual stab and Tecton Gunk Shot, for example, for the Screamtail, and even for the Frostlass, or the Frostmoth, rather. Looks very good here. Just a plethora of really good offensive options for the Empoleon this week. Definitely looking like they can cause an upset here because, of course, the Weaviles have been doing very well. Moving on into our third matchup, here we have the Borussia Donphan facing off against Jay's Atlanta Victinis. Now, the Cresselia is now the Terramon on Lars's team as opposed to Salamence. It will be Terra Psychic and Terra Fairy moving forward. Lars used 2 transactions this week to be able to ensure that. I'm assuming this is because the Cresselia hasn't really been able to hold its own offensively, has really just been passive most of the time, but with this new Terra option, it'll definitely be able to potentially even set up sweeps with stored power. Now, I don't think the Cresselia fits in this matchup necessarily. One thing I do notice immediately is that Jay's flying types are actually really good here. I'd like to see a pairing of offensive Tornadus and offensive Corviknight. Something as simple as like Drill Peck with Metronome, Agility, Bulk Up, Roost with Mirror Armor, some kind of set like that on the Corviknight actually goes really hard here. Jay just has to keep the Volcanion in check. Now, of course, Lars is looking for a win this week. Is doing not so hot these last few weeks with a 1-3 record, is going to be looking to utilize probably the Weavile, as the only real check on the opposing side is going to be that Urshifu, which is relatively easy to weaken. Corviknight, of course, can step in, but as I mentioned, Corviknight actually really likes being an offensive role in this game, or at the very least, something that isn't just passively sitting there and allowing the Weavile to chip itself with, say, Rocky Helmet. So Jay is going to have to get a little bit creative here if he wants to handle the Weavile, which Lars is almost assuredly bringing. Another interesting Mon that could make an appearance here this week is going to be that Cloth. It's got really good coverage into Jay's team, and Jay does not like getting his items knocked off, especially on something like the Skeleturge, and rock moves are generally uncontested on his team. Once again, the Urshifu kind of has to step in there to be able to take hits, and it's got no way to recover, so we could even see rest on Urshifu this week.
We are now going to be moving on to the matchup between the San Francisco Arcaniners going up against the Chicago Dragapults. So looking over here, for the San Francisco Arcaniners, we have Chi-Yu, Volcarona, which is the Terra Captain, Gyarados, Garganacl, Amoonguss, Howlucha, Regieleki, Rotom, Rillaboom, and Tinkaton. Of course, he does not have that final mod. And then on the Chicago Dragapult side, we have Dragapult, of course, Iron Moth, Scizor, Enamorous Therian, Hippowdon, Iron Hands, Serena, Ursaring, Mesprit, Rotom Frost, and Tauros Paldea Water form. So, right off the bat, I think this is a relatively even matchup. A lot of, looking at this matchup, a lot of the Pokemon on each side can check, threats on the other side. For Volcarona, you kind of have Dragapult that can kind of check it. The Scizor on the Dragapult side, you have things like the Volcarona that can potentially check it, the Gyarados that can potentially check it. A lot of that going on, like a lot of the mons on each side kind of have a check, except for potentially the Chi-Yu. Looking at the Chicago Dragapults team, there's really nothing that can ever switch into Chi-Yu. He doesn't even really have to necessarily predict dark. Special dark moves are very, very spammable versus his team. Maybe Tauros can take a hit or two. Maybe if you run specially defensive Hippowdon, it won't get absolutely nuked, but definitely a very, very strong threat versus the Chicago Dragapults team. And for that reason, I think I'm going to be going with the San Francisco Arcanizers with the slight edge.
Yeah, absolutely. The Chi-Yu can also run Psychic into the Tauros and the Iron Hands, which are looking like Q's best responses to it, honestly. Obviously, there's the Enamorous as well. That doesn't really want to take a fire move. It's got deceptively bad bulk, in fact, despite its high defenses. And Chi-Yu is extremely spammable here. We'll see how Q decides to handle it. It's going to be probably just a completely offensive matchup here, other than, of course, the Hippowdon making an appearance. Otherwise, the Regieleki kind of goes unchecked here.
Definitely. I can kind of see another game plan from the Arcaniners just being to annoy the crap out of him with Garganacl and then just send in Chi-Yu to clean up later.
Yeah, we may have to see a Covert Cloak this week for sure. Moving into our fifth matchup this week, we have Playmore Esports facing off against the Flamethrowers. The Flamethrowers coming off a transaction as well this week. This one's an actual Pokemon switching places on the roster. It's going to be Sylveon showing up instead of the Cyclizar. That's right, they have dropped Cyclizar in favor of Sylveon, a second fairy on the team. Very interesting. Now, I don't think it makes a huge difference here, as the Roaring Moon does have Terra Flying here. So as we saw against the Valiant last week, that kind of helps it eat fairy moves. So I don't think it's going to necessarily be able to I don't think the fairies are necessarily going to be able to handle the Roaring Moon in this matchup, and it actually has a really solid matchup into the opposing team. The Earthworm may actually have to make an appearance just to check the moon. As for the rest of the team, I can actually see a Tarheel bringing a lot of the lower tiers here. Just like in previous weeks, the Dash Bun may make an appearance as it has a really solid matchup into the Baxcalibur, into the Quaquaval, for example. Even the Appleton and the Mismagius may make appearances here, as Mismagius is able to check the Ursaluna to an extent outside of Crunch. The Appleton, of course, anything outside of an Ice move, and even an Ice move with Thick Fat, of course, you're going to be able to get off pretty free Giga Drains into the opposing team. Just got to kind of watch out for the Sylveon, but I don't even know if Sylveon has the room to come to this matchup with Heatran and Glamora sitting at the top. So it's going to be a little bit tough for Gallade this week, I feel. And of course, Playmore Esports are currently on a roll. They've had a lot of really solid performances in the last few weeks, so they're looking really good. And I think they've gotten a solid foundation understanding of their team and how it's supposed to function. They've been using these bonds really well.
I 100% agree. I'm very excited for this matchup. This is one of my favorite matchups that we got going into this week. All right, and moving on to our final matchup for this week, we have the San Diego Snugglers going up against the Copenhagen Sawsbucks. So, looking over to the side of the San Diego Snugglers, we have Palafin, Annihilate, Arcanine, Iron Jugulus, Gothitelle, Rotomwash, Toedscruel, Dunsparce, Klefki, and Muck. So, and then on the Copenhagen Sawsbucks side, we have Iron Bundle, Landorus Therian, Hydreigon, Hisui, Zoroark, Breloom, Slowbro, Talonflame, Hisuian Quillfish, Diancie, Magnezone, and Hisui and Avalugg. So, right off the bat, one of the things I'm noticing that I like for Frosted is she has some decent checks to the two big scary S tiers on the Snugglers team. You know, you have things like Slowbro, Breloom, Hydreigon, Iron Bundle that can all kind of check the Palafin. And then Annihilate, while definitely scarier, still has potential to be revenge killed. You have Talonflame that'll outspeed it, hit with a strong Brave Bird. You have things like Diancie that can take a hit or two and be able to hit it. If Rage Fist is not boosted, Slowbro can probably take a hit from it and deal with it. Then outside of that, you have things like Iron Bundle and Hydreigon that can outspeed it. You have things like Landorus that have Intimidate that can kind of check it. So I'm a big fan of this matchup for Frosted in that regard. Just being able to deal with the two big scary Pokemon at the top. The Snugglers are going to have to be a little bit more creative with how they deal with Frosted's team. So I'm going to give this head-to-head to Frosted. I think she picks up her first win this week.
Definitely. Also, the Zoroark, let's not forget, completely nullifies Annihilate stabs, so it pretty much has to come Terra Fairy here or run some kind of really good coverage move, some dark coverage move that it probably has for the Zoroark. I haven't looked into its full move pool, but yeah, no, you're definitely correct here. I think that Frosted has all the opportunity in the world to pick up her first win here. She could definitely get it done. Once again, I don't really love the San Diego Snugglers lineup. Week to week, I'm finding issues with it, and once again, it's the same deal here. I think that you're correct. Frosted can definitely take advantage of the Snugglers team. All right, you want to move over to the outro or the other matchups?
Yeah, we don't go over standings and preview, right? It's like
no.
a weekly recap thing, right?
Yeah, I think it is. Yeah.
All right, yeah. All right, that was our final matchup for this week. Thank you guys so much for watching. I hope you all enjoyed. Definitely give us your predictions in the comment section down below. If you get it right, maybe we'll send a little comment your way. We'll give you some brownie points for being smarter than everybody else.
We shall acknowledge you, yes.
So, thank you guys so much for watching. Hope you all enjoyed. Give us your predictions down in the comment section below, and we will see you next time.
See ya.